Hi, and welcome to Main Street AI, the podcast where traditional businesses are quietly revolutionizing their operations with artificial intelligence and winning. In this podcast, I sit down with industry leaders from law firms and professional services, fitness and membership services entrepreneurs, and other Main Street businesses to explore their AI journey. We dive into the opportunities they see, the challenges they're navigating, and the real impact of AI on their industries. Whether you're AI curious or ready to implement, this show brings you insights from leaders who are actually using this technology to serve customers better, empower employees, and drive profitable growth. Adam Gutbezahl calls himself the AI therapist for companies and is the perfect description. As a litigation attorney at RIW Law in Boston, Adam advises businesses on AI implementation while his own firm takes a deliberately conservative approach. He writes the monthly newsletter, Chat Adam G, serves on his firm's AI task force, and has a front row seat to both the opportunities and disasters unfolding in legal tech. But Adam isn't afraid of AI. He's excited about the efficiency gains coming to document review and legal research. He just believes in understanding the technology before deploying it, vetting vendors properly, and auditing systems regularly, just like you'd inspect a car engine. This is measured optimism in a landscape of extremes. Let's dive in.
All right, we're back. This is Stephen Whittier with Satori Coach IO, and I'm here joined by Adam Gutbezahl of RIW Law in Boston. And Adam, thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Great. If you could start off, just introduce yourself in terms of what you do at the firm. Tell me a little bit about your role in the practice, and then we can go from there.
Certainly. So I'm an attorney at Roberto Israel and Weiner. As you said, we're based out of Boston, Massachusetts. I'm in the litigation department. My two primary focus areas are land use. Ground up, trying to get permits and approvals for development of certain projects, to disputes in construction, to conveyances, and then employment law. I also do general business litigation, so corporate governance, things like that. And then in the employment and corporate governance, I've become sort of the AI geek. When November 2022, ChatGPT entered the fold, and I realized a lot of my clients didn't quite understand the technology. My father served me well at a young age, making me watch 2001: Space Odyssey and Terminator, got me into that kind of technology, and this became an avenue for me to take that geek interest that I had in sort of science fiction approaches to technology and explaining what it actually is to clients. And so I've been advising companies on proper and improper uses of AI systems and large language models. I have a monthly newsletter, Chat Adam G, that goes out to individuals talking about what's happening in the workplace with respect to the use of AI.
Great. And in terms of your practice, is that what you just defined? Is that what your practice in general does, or is that just your particular specialty? Does the practice expand beyond that in terms of its scope?
Well, my practice is anything with respect to employment-related matters, right?
Okay.
So if you have HR issues, hiring, firing, personnel management, help in that, and then primarily we represent companies. Occasionally we represent the employees. So as part of advising companies on their policies, personnel issues, AI has come into the fold, because whether we want to accept it or not, as business leaders, AI is here to stay. It's only going to become more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
And so rather than avoid these technological advancements, we should utilize these tools in a safe and secure manner. And so I'm there to try and talk them through that. If you don't do anything with AI, companies that we represent that are, say, landscaping companies, they're not really going to be using AI, right? Things where you're getting your fingernails dirty. So I represent those kind of companies in the employment context as well.
Sure. Great. And given that AI is still in the Wild West phase, but it's a tsunami that is absolutely coming, what are the major trends that you're seeing in the industry right now? Could be specific to your particular clients, but also more general, more broad, related to the legal field overall.
Sure. So with respect to my clients, and again, I forgive the sort of couching and throat clearing. I can't provide any formal legal advice, and this is my opinion, not the opinion of my firm or my clients. But what I've seen in the business sector is there's a difference between the haves and have-nots, and I think this is the same in the legal field as well. There are those entities or law firms that are able to develop their own systems, right? They have the capital, they have the financial means to create their own AI systems, and therefore they have some more security in what's within the proverbial black box.
Mhm.
Then you have your second tranche, which would be those that are using vendors, that are using, in the legal context, for example, you have two big platforms, which are Thomson Reuters, they have Westlaw, and then you have LexisNexis. Those are the two biggest vendors, but you also have Bloomberg Law, a number of vendors that are saying, hey, we can help you in this particular area. The third tranche would be the free platforms, your Anthropic, your OpenAI, your Grok, that are essentially, you're not paying for it, but with that comes the risk that what you should know is you are the product then, right? They are using your data to be trained on, and that's where a number of individuals, especially in the legal field, get in trouble. What I have observed personally is that some of the bigger players in the industry are starting to swallow up some of the smaller vendors. If you have a particular service where they're saying, hey, we can help you specifically with contract law. We're very good at being able to read the contracts that are in your database, identify certain provisions, and make recommendations. There's an arms race for some of the bigger companies to acquire that vendor and incorporate within their own system. So it's almost like a monopoly fight right now. Anytime somebody comes up with an innovative approach in the legal field, one of these big players is going to try and swallow them whole. There's security in that. A number of people go to law school and they know these vendors because they're trained on using those for legal research or for analysis. And so there's some security there. But at the same time, I'm always reluctant. Anybody who's using technology they don't fully understand could be using it not to the best of its ability or using it improperly and get themselves into some trouble. And we're not, say, as highly regulated as, say, healthcare, right, or the financial services industry, where you can really get in trouble improperly using AI. But we have a code of professional conduct. We have certain obligations that we have to the court, if you're a litigator like me, to our colleagues, to our clients. And you really have to make sure that you are on the up and up with respect to your use of AI. That's been an interesting thing to see how that's been navigated in the industry lately.
Right. And could you speak a little bit more about any particular fears or uncertainties, apprehensions about the adoption, anything like that?
Right. I would say what is natural for people is when there's something they don't understand, there's a fear of it, right? And there's often reluctance saying, well, we're not going to use this until we fully understand it. And I can appreciate that. The issue is it's like chasing a car right now to try and fully understand AI, right? Your understanding of some of these large language models a month ago would be very different than it is now. I mean, we'll just use the one most commonly known by the general population, ChatGPT, right? A month ago, what you understood about ChatGPT 4 or 4.5 is completely different now that they have ChatGPT 5. Whether you have ChatGPT Enterprise, right? There's all these different aspects, and many attorneys are very busy, too busy to really dig into this. And so they're kind of punting. They're saying, well, I'll wait until I have time to understand this. And there's really never that time until push comes to shove. So I think that's the concern. The other concern is because you get people who make the news for using these systems improperly. And so it seems as though at least once a month, somebody in the country is getting caught, an attorney is getting caught submitting papers to the court that have fake work product, right? Hallucinations coming from one of these free platforms. And there's that fear, I don't want to be the person who makes the news because I thought I understood the technology and I used it improperly. So with that, many attorneys tend to be more conservative because of things like that. You never want to make news. Maybe you want your clients to make news in a positive way, but you as the attorney don't want to do that. And until you get one of these larger vendors who say, hey, listen, I can explain it to you. This is how it's going. Many people are saying, you know what, we're not going to use it.
Mhm.
And there's the pros and cons, right? I mean, there's some phenomenal efficiencies for using an AI system. I joke and say it's essentially like having, a free intern, an unpaid intern sometimes, or nominally paid if you're paying a subscription. But you get a lot of people who just trust it. They think these computers are so advanced, I can just copy and paste. Not to age myself a little bit, but it used to be, if you copy and pasted what was on Wikipedia and submitted that, you deserve to fail.
Yes.
I think that's where we're at now. If you take something from a large language model or from agentic AI systems and you just pass it off as your own, you deserve to get caught.
Mhm.
But it can be a great starting point for you to then go and verify the information that was given to you. That's been the issue, is people who are time crunched or are so concerned that they're not going to do that. And so they just stay away from it. And what I always love seeing is in the courts, what happens is, these sanctions cases, 9 out of 10 times, the attorney who gets busted points to some subordinate, says, well, they did it. And fortunately, the courts have not tolerated that. They have said, well, you're both at fault. You have an ethical obligation to confirm that what you're submitting to the court is correct. And you can't just say, well, my subordinate did it and I relied on them. No, you have to personally go and review everything, make sure the cases you cite are real. And if you don't, you're the one who's going to get in trouble. So that has, I think, been a good thing. One other interesting wrinkle that has happened is pro se litigants, which are essentially individuals who represent themselves. It has become a lot easier for somebody to feel like they can represent themselves instead of feel like they have to pay a lot of money to a lawyer, because they can go to one of these large language models, say, this is what I need. And to someone who's not an attorney, it comes across really believable and like it's real. I have spoken to judges in Massachusetts. I've done some talks and bar associations on this, and I've had at least one judge tell me that they have a serious issue with pro se litigants who submit things, because it's time that the judge has to take to review the pleading, confirm if things are correct.
Mhm.
It's time spent for the other party that they have to go and point out if things are incorrect. And so rather than speeding up the process, it has actually made litigation take more time and become more expensive when a pro se litigant uses AI.
That's
So those are some of
Yeah.
the key things that have been interesting to watch.
right. Generally speaking, I think that's a great point, because obviously, on the one hand, there's the carelessness, just blindly trusting it, embracing it a little too quickly. On the other hand, we see the technology adoption curve in every industry. Every time there's a new paradigm shift in technology, and then there's always people that wait so long that they miss the opportunity, and then they're
Right.
playing catch up, and they're way behind, and also typically losing market share as well. So
Yeah.
On the flip side, from all that, all the apprehensions, what are you most excited about with the technology for your field?
I'm excited about the efficiency that will come with it. I can tell you my my least favorite thing to do as a litigator is document review. You ask for documents and you get hundreds of thousands of pages. And mind you, there have been systems in place for years that have assisted with this, but it has become more accessible and more cost efficient to use these types of systems. And since the algorithms are becoming so vastly improved, it used to be essentially, I'm going to give you all of this and you sort of summarize it for me. But now it can be even more specifically tailored, where you can provide the AI system with a prompt. This is what this case is about. These are the things I need to prove.
Mhm.
These are the facts that are pertinent. Identify the documents that have these types of facts in them. And it does it pretty well. Now, again, Stephen, we were talking about, you can't just copy and paste, but you can save a lot of time.
Yes.
And therefore your client's money. My least favorite part of being a litigator is how expensive litigation is. It's not like Law and Order, where things get wrapped up in 42 minutes with a few commercial breaks. These cases take years and can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so anything I can do to be cost conscious to best advocate for my clients, I'm excited about that. I think the technology is almost there. It's not quite there yet, but I could talk to you in 6 months and it could be there at the rate that it is advancing. So that's what I'm most excited about is the efficiencies that lawyers are going to be able to use when it comes to some of the menial tasks of, like, you get 100,000, 200,000 pages, and usually 80% of it is completely irrelevant. And to be able to trust a system that can do that initial review for you, that's really exciting to me.
Great. Now, what I wanted to do is actually shift gears a little bit and talk about your practice.
Sure.
Just in general, like whatever level of detail you're comfortable sharing, but relative to your industry, where would you say your practice is right now in terms of its growth, and where are you looking to grow it to?
So when it comes to my practice and my use of AI, I would say that I am closer to the bottom. So RIW is continuing to consider which vendors it trusts, which ones it wants to use. We've been more conservative, and I support that. We have an AI task force. I've been serving on that, and we're trying to better understand the market. I wouldn't say how the technology works. I feel like I understand the technology, but we have a number of different vendors, and there's a difference, of course, between what they tell you and what the service actually does. And for us, a key concern is privilege, right? I don't want to do anything using a platform that could waive the attorney-client privilege.
Right.
And I have to make sure that my use of any of these third-party vendors maintains that privilege. So I will utilize it in non-substantive ways. So if I'm doing legal research or writing, I can use it on the subscription services that we have as the initial review, right? But I am not using it to write anything for me. I'm still doing that. I am optimistic that within the next year, we'll have a clearer sense of the vendors that we trust that can answer the questions. It's funny, I talk to some of them and I think they're surprised when an attorney understands like what a data audit is, and asks questions about how often are you doing it, what does it look like, and they kind of blanch at that. So when we get vendors who can answer those questions honestly, then I feel a lot better. We are, as a practice, we are not of the size that we would be able to create our own internal AI system. We're not one of these, top 5 law firms that can do that. And so, and I can say, as a quick digression, there have recently been issues with that as well. There was a case where Morgan & Morgan, the injury law firm, they got sanctioned, and they were using their own internal database. So something happened, something got corrupted where it hallucinated, which to me, again, is why you need to make sure that you're auditing your AI platform. My guess is they created it, it was good to go, and for whatever reason, they weren't checking on it to make sure it was working the way it was supposed to, right? You wouldn't buy a car and then never go and get it inspected to make sure the engine's running properly. So when we have these vendors, we've talked to 1 or 2. We have one that we use for legal research purposes. I also think that each passing year, as we get more law students turn to lawyers who are trained on these systems, it's going to become more prevalent. It's going to become the new normal to use these AI systems as a supplement. So we, as a firm and myself, I'm still, I guess I'm more conservative, and maybe that's because I advise companies, and so I see where things could go wrong. So maybe with that, because I have a more cynical eye, I make sure that I'm extremely strategic in how I would use it. But as I get to communicate with people who know more about this, or I believe are actually answering the questions they're being asked, then I think we'll jump into it more.
Great. What would you say your firm does extraordinarily well? Like what do you excel at? And one of the ways that I usually pose this question is, we can get your thoughts, but also what do your clients say? Like when you get feedback from him, or from them,
Sure.
rather, the types of things that you hear over and over again.
Yeah. I usually joke that my clients say that they're glad they don't hear from me a lot in the employment law context. I think we are, which is funny because it seems like the opposite of talking about AI is, I think what RIW does better than anybody else is we understand that people come first.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I can be in a complex business litigation matter where two companies are suing the heck out of each other. But at the end of the day, our clients are the individuals who run those companies. My goal and my colleagues' goal is always to zealously advocate to win while also understanding that these are people who have families, that have stresses, and to the extent we can offload that stress, we can say, we've got this for you, we're going to analyze it, we're going to give you our opinions, and we're going to help you get through this. I think, I've worked at a number of places, RIW does that better than anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I like to think our clients, when other things come up, they come back to us. We're a full service firm. We have a tax group, we have a trust and estates group, we have a business litigation or just even complex business matters. And so when they have a matter with one thing, they come back to us on the other because they know at the end of the day, we're going to treat them like people. We're going to treat them fairly, be honest with them, and be there for them. And that's why I'm so honored to be part of the RIW family.
Great. And then for the firm's goals, where would you say the business? You said not a top 5 firm, but a large full service firm. Where would you say that you're looking to grow to in the shorter term, say over the next 12 months or so?
That's a great question. I'd say our goal is always to continue to grow, right? Continue to give fantastic representation to the clients we have, while of course having the capacity to take on more clients.
Mm-hmm.
I think the difference between us and some of those top 5 firms is, in my very biased opinion, but still the difference is just the amount that we charge. I think we give just as good legal service, if not better, but at a fraction of the rate that they do because they are the white shoe firm. Right? We have phenomenal attorneys. And so I think it's just continuing to make people aware that we're out there and how we can assist them. This AI stuff has been one of those examples where people are using it. There's a couple surveys that came out just this past month. I think there's one survey that had 1,000 US workers that were surveyed, and it showed that I think it was nearly 4 out of 10 admitted that they would rather have an AI manager than a human manager. And there was a huge proportion that admitted that they will use AI in violation of a company policy if they think it's going to make the task faster, right? So this is something that workplaces need to acknowledge. And so being at a place like RIW, where we understand where the future of the workplace landscape is going and how we can assist, I think that's what I'm excited about as well. That as technology advances, our understanding of not just the legal landscape, but the workplace landscape is adjusting as well, so we can meet the needs of our clients as they develop.
Gotcha. What would you say? So just summarizing that, you're looking to make sure that you can continue to acquire new clients while still maintaining the same level of quality that you're known for, that kind of defines your firm. Are there any particular challenges that you would point out for hitting those growth targets along the way?
I mean, the easy non-answer answer is always that we can't control the market, right? So, we do a lot of construction work, for example, and if there are issues in the financial market and people are not as likely to acquire properties, do construction projects or acquire other properties for our real estate practice, that's a challenge that's hard for us to overcome. Now, fortunately, in 2020, the firm had a phenomenal year, even though it was COVID and there wasn't much going on, but we were able to adjust and adapt. So that's always a challenge, right? We can't change what's going to happen with interest rates. We can't change with how people are going to spend their money. But I think being consistent in how we provide representation helps us weather any type of storm like that.
Yeah. You bank equity with your reputation, for sure.
Precisely.
Yeah. Really, just to close it out, I always like to end with we've talked generally about AI, your use of it in the firm, your own particular experience with it. We've talked about the industry. We've talked about your firm generally. For you personally, what would you say is your driving force, like the thing that you'll think about before you go to bed, what wakes you up in the morning? What is most meaningful for you with what you do?
I have a 6, almost 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. I have an amazing wife who somehow puts up with me on a regular basis. My driving force is them. I was very fortunate to have grandparents that were like best friends growing up. And one of the things that my dad's parents in particular really drove home with me as a young kid was that all else being the same, we leave places better than we found them.
Mhm.
It can be as small as like you're at the park and there's a piece of trash and you pick it up, to, thinking of long term, how do we make sure that we leave the planet or, our home better? That's what keeps me up at night or gets me out of bed perhaps in the morning, is how am I making sure I'm making things better for my 2 boys than how I found them. And that's, litigation can be extremely contentious. People are not very kind to each other in litigation. I try very hard to bring levity and a sense of humor to it, while also being a bulldog. Don't get me wrong,
Right.
but trying to remind myself that we can still have fun while working hard and be there for each other, to try and demonstrate to my boys that we're going to have adversity in our lives, and that doesn't mean we have to let it grind us down. We can keep our heads up and continue to push forward with a positive attitude.
Great. Adam, fantastic insights. Really appreciate it. That was excellent.
Thanks for having me. It's been a blast.
Awesome. And would you like to, we'll put it in the description as well, but would you like to just say how to contact you?
Sure. So best way is email, agg@riw.com. I'm on LinkedIn. There are not many Gutbezahls, so I have a feeling you'll find me. And you can reach out and subscribe to my newsletter, Chat Adam G. I'd love to hear from you.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.